Good morning, and welcome to IMA's Insight Talk Faculty Friday webinar series. The title of today's presentation is Tips and Strategies for Effective Online Education. I'm Margaret Lockery, and I'll be your host for today's Faculty Friday webinar. It's a pleasure to have Jody Ryan as part of our program, and she will be serving as moderator for today's event. Jody is the Director of Member Engagement at IMA. In this position, she works with IMA's student and academic communities to create programs, products, and services to meet their specific needs. She also oversees the development of the IMA Student Leadership Conference and fundraising activities. Jody graduated from Lehigh University with a Bachelor of Science degree in accounting. Her work experience prior to joining IMA includes experience at another major accounting association, as well as exposure to the audit, human resources, and training areas within two of the Big Four public accounting firms. Hi, Jody. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Margaret. Thank you so much. And I'm pleased to be a part of the Faculty Friday webinar series. And on behalf of IMA, I want to welcome everyone to today's session. It's a very timely and hopefully helpful one, given the new reality of teaching online. And we have three amazing faculty who are with us to share their knowledge. First, let me introduce Dr. Kim Swanson-Church. Kim is an assistant professor of accounting information systems at the University of Missouri, Kansas City's Henry W. Block School of Management and has operated several family-owned businesses for over 25 years. She has a Master's of Accountancy and Tax and AIS from Kansas State University and a PhD in AIS from the University of Arkansas. She is a frequent speaker on disruptive technologies, including blockchain and data analytics. We also have Dr. Wendy Teets. Wendy is a professor in the Department of Accounting in the College of Business Administration at Kent State University, where she teaches financial accounting and managerial accounting. She teaches in a variety of formats, including large face-to-face, not in the near future, but hopefully soon, hybrid, synchronous web-based, and asynchronous web-based. She authors a blog, Accounting in the Headlines, which has real-world news stories and resources for use in the introductory accounting classroom. And finally, we also have Dr. Kelly Richmond Pope. Kelly is an associate professor in the School of Accountancy and MIS at DePaul University, where her research and teaching focuses on organizational misconduct, ethics, and fraud, and how organizations design cultures and compliance systems to confront these challenges. We're so excited to have all three of you to be a part of today's very informative and important program. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Kim to start.
Thank you, Jody. It's a pleasure to be a part of today's program. Applied education systems define online and remote teaching. Online learning is defined as educational tools based on and accessible from the internet. You may also hear this as cloud-based education solutions to enhance blended learning environments as a supplement to direct teacher guidance, whereas remote teaching would be differentiated. Remote learning, as students are being educated, typically without in-person interaction among their instructor or peers using pre-made instructional materials. In fact, it's probably more accurate to say that remote learning is a highly specific subset of the online learning since it frequently takes place on the internet. When I was discussing this concept with many of the faculty across the nation this last week, Wendy provided a great analogy that she had posted on her social media. In the analogy, she provided perspective for what happened to most of us over spring break. So if you'll note the picture, she discussed online teaching as a science using thoughtful preparation to balance effort and learning similar to preparing a gourmet meal with a recipe for guidance. You have time to shop, prepare ingredients, assemble the meal into a piece of artwork for consumption to the delight of your patrons. Whereas this recent crisis has resulted in moving our classes to a remote teaching environment in roughly a week. This is more closely represented by a situation where you might be at home and your family tells you that they're hungry right now. You go to the pantry and realize you just got home from vacation and there aren't any groceries in the house, so everyone's getting a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You have to worry about the shopping list and meal preparation later. Takeaway from this analogy is that the PB&Js aren't necessarily a piece of art, but at the end of the day, everyone got fed. So we're going to discuss with you today how to make the best PB&J you can with the limited time we have left in the semester. I'll provide an overview of the course delivery, online resources, on setting expectations, and how to emphasize student engagement before handing off the presentation to Wendy and Kelly, who provide actionable recommendations that you can implement in minutes rather than hours of preparation. I'm going to turn over the presentation to Jody to cover our first poll question.
Great. Thank you so much, Kim. Attendees should see the first polling question now open on your screen. I would like to remind all participants that you will have about 30 seconds to respond to each of the polling questions today. You may begin responding to each question as soon as it appears on your screen. First, our first polling question is, I have taught a class using A, online teaching, B, remote teaching, C, both, or D, neither. Please note that after selecting an answer, you must click the Submit button located on the right side of your screen, just below the response options, in order to successfully record your answer. Now I'm going to turn it back to Kim and see how you responded.
As I would expect it. Most people that are teaching online already have some resources that are already converted to a digital platform. Remote teaching, as we discussed, is a specified subset of online teaching. It's great that there's a few of us that have experience doing both. And for the group that's neither, that's what we're here for today. We're here to share ideas, tips, and tricks with you to help get you through the next 5 or 6 weeks of class. So I guess I've been lucky in the respect that I converted to a blended cost accounting class a year ago, meaning half my sessions are already online while the other half are in person. My AIS classes have always been a hybrid version of a flipped classroom, so many of my resources were already delivered digitally. I consider myself really lucky this last week, but that gave me the opportunity to help other faculty since I didn't have to spend as much time converting my own resources. We're all making decisions right now on how to deliver our courses remotely. I would say the primary decision is whether we're going to be doing things synchronously or asynchronously, whether we want to deliver content in real time. It's important to make sure to check your quickly evolving university policies on decisions you make for real-time content, such as holding classes remotely, but recording the session to post for students to review at a later time. Universities have been providing access to tools like Zoom, Skype, and WebEx that allow you to meet with your students and record sessions to post in your learning management system. Your LMS was designed for online teaching, so there are many hidden features in the LMS that you might want to explore. There's also tools like Respondus to provide lockdown browser service or other proctoring services to use for assessment. As an AIS professor, though, that spends a lot of time with IT controls, I caution jumping into these tools for assessment because they often result in a false sense of security. Any new tool should be researched and approached with caution, and these online resources can be overwhelmed right now by the recent spike in requests. It should also be noted that several companies have already abandoned many of the conferencing tools like Zoom and Skype over privacy and security issues of recorded sessions. Since I'm not discussing trade secrets with students, I feel pretty comfortable proceeding with these tools for right now. I've been together with my students for 2/3 of this semester, so I feel pretty comfortable emphasizing the term flexibility for the last third of the semester. Policies are changing quickly, so flexibility is going to be my best friend for the next month to avoid having to redo activities. Just 2 days ago, I was advised that at my university, we are no longer allowed to require attendance for real-time delivery. No one knows the constraints of your student body better than you do. I work at a university with a large percent of non-traditional and first-generation college students. This means I have many students that are head of households, will be managing remote learning of their own children, likely sharing technology if it's even available at home, and most importantly, have major disruptions to their income or are now working remotely themselves. I may have an outstanding single-parent student return from spring break next week that is far more worried about how to feed their children than how to log into the internet with a smartphone during my class time. Ultimately, what can I do to break down the barriers to ensure the student's success for the remainder of the semester? I believe it starts with taking a deep breath, looking at the outstanding learning objectives for the course, and deciding what is most important for the remainder of the semester. There isn't time for me to learn the science of online learning, but there are resources to help move content online. And hopefully the PB&J I serve to my students might even get a little fancy bread. So as we look at the resources available, universities and the faculty at those universities have really come together to provide training and lifeline for colleagues. I have access to more resources than I could review in a year based on communications in the last 2 weeks from my own university leadership. The publishers are typically the first line of defense for most courses. They have been forthcoming with providing access to additional course materials at no charge that are already designed to import into your learning management system. It took me less than an hour to set up activities, homework, and exams through Connect for my cost accounting course to get us through the remainder of the semester. However, my AIS course is another discussion. The publishers don't provide much love for these courses, so I have to be more creative. The professional organizations like the IMA, the AICPA, and the AAA have outstanding resources for every possible topic you can think of, including emerging technologies for my own courses. These groups have been quick to respond to the recent crisis and have been communicating with members since the onset. For example, on Tuesday, the IMA sent out an email to academic members where they compiled numerous IMA resources into a single list to help us more efficiently implement resources into class. A copy of that email has been added to the appendix of today's presentation that will be shared with you later. I'm getting creative to try to lighten the mood in my courses after we return from spring break. I've converted content to hands-on activities using resources like Hyperledger Composer to enhance blockchain discussions that would be difficult to discuss remotely. So I'm going to get their hands on the technology using a web-based tool since they don't have access to many of the programs we typically use in the computer labs. Don't assume because you have a license for a seat in a physical lab that same license can be applied to your virtual labs. Introducing internal controls can sometimes be a mind-numbing, albeit important topic of most AIS classes. So next week, I've encouraged students to bring a beverage and popcorn to class so we can discuss the COSO ERM framework and internal controls while we view the original Jurassic Park movie. That's how I'm converting content online. Don't forget, other faculty like Wendy and Kelly have also developed outstanding resources that they've shared with peers for years, like Wendy's Accounting in the Headlines for engaging activities on current events, or the resources that Wendy and her colleagues have created for the Accounting and Analytics that provide several short activities that can be implemented for analytics coverage. And everyone has heard about or hopefully seen Kelly's movie, All the Queen's Horses. When it comes to expectations, I look at my own class. I have a well-oiled machine that's been my AIS class for nearly 2 decades, and it's been decimated by this crisis. So flexibility is my new favorite word, and it drives my expectations for the remainder of the semester. As I look over my syllabus, the remaining coursework, the outstanding learning objectives, and the in-class activities and exams that I've spent years honing and cannot be delivered, I've picked a pick-your-battle strategy as I decide what to keep and what to let go. And I want to emphasize this one time, not forever. I recognize I don't have time to become the online teaching expert I would normally research at least a semester in advance for this type of delivery. I also recognize that I have other job responsibilities outside of the classroom and that my own children begin remote learning next week. I have the same time constraint as my students. I'm especially empathetic of students as I've begun to receive individual plans, platforms, and policies from 8 different teachers for 2 different children. That's 16 different teachers delivering remote learning, and I have to manage that outside of class. That's what our students are dealing with right now. I'm routinely hearing that students have inconsistent access to technology or have to share with other members of their family. Now that students have returned home, reliable or consistent internet access is also not a guarantee. Changes in family and work may also impact students' real-time availability. I've created guided notes with embedded videos to walk them through content, corresponding to 5 to 10-minute hands-on activities, sample videos for problems before they work homework assignments, and some engagement activities like LinkedIn groups. Most IT departments are working remotely also, so manage your expectations for remote teaching support. This is an unprecedented event, and things will continue to change. That's the only thing we can guarantee moving forward. This leads me to an important discussion. How do we keep students engaged? Think about how you typically behave during online CPE. This isn't a formal poll, but right now, how many of you have a second or third screen active where you're working on another project and answering email while I'm speaking? That's going to be your students. You can keep it simple, using your learning management system to pose a quarantine question to the group to allow students to talk about their experience and feel like you care. Like, post your favorite quarantine movie to share with the group in a discussion board. I have a recent experience after being isolated for a while where I realized the importance of periodically seeing other people's faces. So when you're recording your videos for class, maybe show your face occasionally in a video or two. I realized that it made the material feel more dynamic and less static when I could see the person talking in the corner. And it made them remember that I'm a person, not just a talking head. Even if you just show your quarantine buddy, like your cat or your dog, during the video, it still makes the video feel like it's in real time. Based on students' constraints during the crisis, I've forgone group work for the remainder of the semester. That's my choice for my students that just do not have consistency in the technology required to complete these activities. Reminder, just for this semester, not forever. We're still having asynchronous group discussions to keep students engaged. My current LinkedIn group, for example, is right now posting their favorite quarantine parody video from YouTube for this past week. Wendy and Kelly have outstanding engagement activities to share with the group. No matter what, it is important to make sure that the students feel engaged and that they aren't isolated during this time. Most did not and would not choose remote learning. Let's turn it back over to Jody to answer the next poll question.
Great. Thank you so much, Kim. So we are at our second poll question. And as you know, you may begin responding to the poll questions immediately, and you'll have about 30 seconds to respond. Our second question today is, which issue is your biggest concern for the remainder of the semester? Is it A, course delivery, B, available resources, C, expectations, or D, engagement? After choosing an answer, please be sure to click the Submit button located below the response options so that we may record your answer. And now I believe I'm sending it to Wendy to begin her section of the presentation.
Actually, I'm going to finish one more slide before we go.
Okay.
You're fine. And I would agree with the group myself. My biggest concern moving forward is the engagement part, to not allow the students to feel so isolated in their remote environments. We're already isolating personally, and to have the students not feel isolated in the class also. So I think you're really going to enjoy the next part of the presentation because there's a lot of engagement ideas, and I'm sure Wendy and Kelly both will talk to you about how they're setting expectations. They'll discuss other available resources, and they both will also discuss their take on course delivery. So I think that this is the right presentation for you. The takeaway that I want to leave before I leave the group discussion is don't forget to have fun. I like to have fun in my class. I teach 3-hour classes. We have to learn to laugh a little to keep students engaged. So this is why I'm having a Jurassic Park movie night to give me a chance to re-engage with the students while still covering the content and having a little fun. So I'm going to turn everything over to Wendy now so that she can discuss with you some of her great ideas for engagement.
Great, thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run through some really quick things that you can inject in your class to introduce that engagement piece, because our students are isolated, we're isolated, and these are just things that are really easy to insert in your class. So GroupMe messaging is a mobile app. You can also use it on your computer. It's owned by Microsoft. It is free for everyone, and it's basically a group chat, and the size limit is 500 students. I did I installed this the day after we shut down. I created a group, and what you'll see here is you can type a message. This is a screenshot from my computer. You can type a message that goes to all students. Students have the option to sign up for it. No one sees each other's cell phone numbers, and they can use it on their computer or an app. And I've had about half my class sign up for GroupMe, and things that you can do with GroupMe is, first of all, you type your message to everyone, so it's much just like texting your friends. And then you have some other options. You could create a poll, you could create an event to remind them of something. You can share photos on here. And the poll thing is really neat. This I did a screenshot of that one morning. This was 5 minutes after I posted it. I asked them how they were feeling about the semester in general, and they started answering. So at this point, I had 8 people answering. I got a lot more as the day went on, but it's a way to take a quick check of how everybody's doing. I've posted other poll questions about preferences, what they'd like to see, what they wouldn't like to see, and it's really been a way to engage with students. I do make sure when I introduce this to my class that they know it is optional. All people have different preferences, and I'm not doing anything, I'm not conveying anything on this platform that is not conveyed in our learning management system. So you don't want to say everybody's required to do that, because that would introduce a whole nother set of stressors. So that's just one tool you can inject, a way to interact with students who opt in. I am doing class live now, and I have been, so it was a relatively easy transition for me. And I use polling questions through live online sessions, and I do want to pause for a minute. My class is delivered live online during our regular class times, just like during the semester, but I do have it recorded, and students have 48 hours to watch it, so they can watch it anytime today or tomorrow. I use poll questions throughout class, so if you're attending live, you would answer a poll question like that, and I'm writing on the screen as we do. But students who attend class by watching the recording, they also have poll questions that they can answer in an asynchronous environment. So don't think that polling is limited to just the live online class. You can do polling outside of class. Almost all the polling tools are offering free usage during now through the end of May or something like that. So it's a good way to practice it for now. The other thing I do is I do have recorded videos in my class that I've made recorded videos of it. So, and I also do this in live lecture, but I've made short videos in my class, but I try to use local examples. So this is an example, and I actually did this live in class, and then it was recorded for later viewing. This is a house that was sold in Kent, in the city in which I teach, and I use it as an example for relative sales value method. So I put up this house, and right away, someone I had not heard from in the chat room popped up, and what she said was, "Oh my God, that's my house." And then she remained engaged the rest of the period. And I've had similar things happen with students seeing local examples, and it brings up another level of engagement. Another tool that is like polling tool, live or asynchronous Kahoot sessions. This is not for credit. I use them for exam reviews. And basically it puts up a question, and again, I can do it live or provide it. I have one right now that is due, not due, but cuts off 5 days from now. So they answer questions, it is timed, and they have a score based on their accuracy and their time. This is entirely optional, and no names are used. So this is an example of when time runs out, they see how many other people answered it right or wrong. And then there's a scoreboard. Students are assigned fictional names. This is not for credit, nor do you ever know who answered. So this is an activity that is completely anonymous, and it's a way, though, for students to compete with each other, and it is really fun. And Kahoot has their professional version free right now as well. It's normally free, but they're giving away the bells and whistles right now, too. And then this last one that I have for you is something that I started doing just a week and a half ago, wanting to have further conversation with students. So my story was the day after we were shut down a couple weeks ago, I did a Snapchat of my cat, Jubilee. So the filter on it was meet my work from home coworker, and I thought, well, that's really cool. But then I was putting together the what I was going to broadcast that day for class, and I thought, I'm going to put Jubilee in my lecture. So I put Jubilee in my lecture, and I asked my students to email their pet pictures to me, and I'll feature one in class each day. And I wasn't sure how many would do it, but I got students in the chat room in class saying hi to Jubilee. I now have students asking about Jubilee each day. But what has been awesome is the response I have gotten. I have had students email me pictures of their pets. This is Ding Dang, which is a magical cartoon creature they named after. I have gotten, this is Lulu. I also hear from the dog people. This is Crosby and Nim. So I have gotten a wide range of emails, and I'm now to the point where I'm including 8 or 9 at the beginning of class each day. I'm getting emails from students telling me about their pets, and I share those in class, and then there's always conversation going on in the chat room. I don't think it takes away from our academic mission, but it allows students to share something that obviously is important to them. And I think it's really been a good way to open the communication gates with students because we have to remember that nobody asked to be isolated. They don't have their friends anymore with them. So I think it has been a really good way to get some participation. So I'm still putting up pet pictures each day. And then next week, I'm going to be asking for how they're spending their time pictures. So we'll see how that goes. But that brings us to our next polling question. Jody?
Great. Thank you so much, Wendy. And I'll have to send you a picture of my dog, too, so you can feature Cody on one of your slides. But
great.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And now we are at our third and final poll question for today. How would you assess your comfort level right now with your delivery of your courses? Is it A, everything is under control, I've got this? B, pretty good, I feel okay? C, tenuous, I'm still learning a lot? Or D, uncomfortable, I need more help and or time? After choosing an answer, please be sure to click the Submit button located below the response options so that we may record your answer. And now I'm going to turn it back to Wendy to look at the answer and for some final thoughts on her section.
Thank you. Okay. Give it a couple seconds, so let's go here. Great, that's wonderful. So a lot of people are feeling pretty good. Kudos to everyone that has it under control. And know that if you're still learning, you're still grappling, that's a lot of people, and there's a lot of people to help you. My closing advice before I turn it over to Kelly is realize that things are not going to be perfect no matter what. It's not going to be perfect. And my advice is let it go. You just have to let it go, move on, and do the best you can. So now I'm going to turn it over to Kelly. So Kelly, it's all yours.
Thank you, Wendy. Hi, everyone. Again, this is Kelly, and I teach at DePaul University in Chicago. And I'm excited about this new challenge that faces all of us. One of the things that I started at the very beginning of my class, and I teach managerial accounting and forensic accounting, both at the undergraduate and graduate level. And what I thought that was important was to make sure that my students understood that I understood what their fears were. And so what I did is I polled my previous class that was online and got some feedback and some testimonies about their experience in my course. And so what I did is I then sent those comments to my incoming class. So my spring quarter class, the class that's coming up starting next week, got a list of feedback from other students about what the online experience was with me. Or even if you haven't done it online before, just feedback as to what other students have said about you, whether it's you're very responsive, you explain things well, because what I've found in the past is that students listen to other students. So collecting some feedback and curating some feedback from other students to give to the incoming class, I found to be very helpful. Especially it eases any concerns or nervousness that students might have. So some of my tips are first, making sure that you set clear goals and expectations. And I think that as instructors, we often sometimes think we're clearer than we actually are. And so I have this image on the slide that's an example of something that's less clear and something that's more clear. And if you look at the less clear, we heard this a lot, practice social distancing. You heard it, but you might not have actually known what it meant. But when you're more clear, stay at home, get groceries once per week. And I think that this is a really powerful slide because I think we need to speak in very short, concise ways as to what exactly to do. And a lot of times when we're given instruction, we can tend to be a little bit more wordy, but we have to set really clear goals. So one of the things that I do in my both face-to-face class and online class is I really use a story-driven teaching method. And so I'm always looking for a good story to really structure a conversation around. And I think that works well both in an online environment that we're in or face-to-face. And so I just wanted to give a list of some areas for content that I use because engagement for me is very important, and it sounds like from our polling results it's important to our attendees today. And so utilizing video, in my opinion, really helps engagement. And so places that I get video from, current video, TED Talks, TED Ed lessons, Helios Digital Learning has video-enhanced e-cases. I often will use Netflix, Amazon, or even Apple trailers. So it really just depends on what I'm telling my students if I want them to purchase something versus if I want something to be free. So I use a lot of trailers, too, to really spark that engagement on the discussion board. So one of the things that I did years ago, and I don't know who I'm talking to, but if you don't know, must have been 7 years ago, I produced and directed a documentary called All the Queen Sources. And it chronicles a $53 million fraud that was committed by a city comptroller in this small town called Dixon, Illinois. And it is available on Amazon. If your students have an Amazon account, it's available there on Amazon Prime. But it's also on iTunes, Google Play, DirecTV, YouTube, and at a very nominal price. But before I incorporate that in my class, I will poll my students and ask who has Amazon, who doesn't, to try to gauge if there is any issue. Typically, 98% of my students have an Amazon account, so it's easy for me just to include this in my course. It's a great piece of video content for an intro to financial accounting class, a managerial accounting class, accounting ethics, forensic accounting. It creates a really good story that you can use for assignments, that you can use for discussion boards. I have questions that go with it if you're interested, but it's something that I really found that students enjoy because it's outside of the book. We all know that we have a challenge with students reading our textbooks in the first place, so I like to incorporate content that's a little bit unexpected that really sparks that engagement for them. So just for example, I did a presentation yesterday with the University of Calgary. They had 60 students in their auditing class, and we did a Zoom meeting. And if you look, the second square is my face, and then you see a picture in the background. So what I did in Zoom is I changed my virtual background to include various images of Rita Crunwell. And Rita Crunwell is the perpetrator of the crime in my documentary. And it really sparked engagement because students were seeing images that they hadn't seen before. And we were supposed to only talk for 30 minutes. We ended up talking for an hour and 20 minutes because the students had so many questions. What they did is the professor assigned the film outside of class. They watched it, and then I did a Q&A with them on Zoom, and the whole class came. So it really sparked engagement, had a lot of great feedback from students. And it's interesting because without this coronavirus issue that we're dealing with, I would have never even done something like this in this way, but it was highly effective. And I enjoyed it. I met a group of students that I didn't know. I interacted with a faculty member that I met on LinkedIn, and it was a really good experience. Something else that I like to use for really good video and good content is the TED website. TED, not only, I'm sure we're familiar with TED Talks, and so you can go there and find good talks, and if you need a list of talks that I use in my accounting class, feel free to reach out. But then there's another educator site called TED Ed. So it's ed.ted.com. And they have 4-minute animations on various topics. Again, they're things that can complement the class. If you can't embed this in your learning management system, you can just put the link in. Not only can you do the link, TED Ed has customizable lessons and questions that go with each lesson that you click on. So it's a really nice way to incorporate some video in your class, especially if you don't have any video handy. It's great for online engagement, perfect for discussion boards, and they're short. They're short segments, so no animation on the TED Ed side is longer than 5 minutes, and then most of our talks on the TED website talks are no longer than 18 minutes. So they're really good things that complement a lecture. Or something else that I do, and I think it works really nicely in an online environment, is teaching with podcasts. The first one that you see on this slide, called Dupe of the Week, is a podcast that I created with another professor. His name is William Cressy. He's a professor at Governor State. And if you go to anywhere you get your podcast, if it's Apple Podcasts, and put in Dupe of the Week, we have, there's 15 different short 15-minute podcast episodes that we created about various fraud topics. Now, I teach a forensic accounting class, but if you teach an ethics class or if you incorporate ethics into your accounting class, these might be some short segments and bursts that you can put into your class. Something else that I use in my class, and I have questions that I developed with The Dropout. The Dropout is a podcast. It's a 5-part podcast series that is produced by ABC Studios. And this is about the Theranos scandal, where Elizabeth Holmes, former CEO, lied about the profits that the company, or lied about the viability of her product. And students love this. Now, I use The Dropout in my face-to-face class, but it works well. It will work well in an online class because you can set up a discussion board. You can have questions that go with it. And there's a lot of complementary material around this case, whether you have them read the indictment, whether you have them watch the documentary on Netflix. I mean, there's a lot of courses that you can create that's easy because most of the work has already been done. So again, podcasts, great for online engagement, perfect for discussion boards. They're short segments, and it's, again, this whole idea of story-based learning. And so I found a lot of success with that. In terms of connecting with students, 2 things that I'm doing in my class right now is I set up a Slack channel, and you see the website there, slack.com. And to me, Slack is like a cross between email and texting. And I use this a lot in my creative projects when I'm working with directors and graphic artists, but it works well because it allows you to create different groups. So you can have questions with professor could be one channel, or you could just have a student-only channel where they are communicating. Slack is very similar to GroupMe, but it's just another platform. Very easy to set up, operates off your phone. You get a notification just like you would get a notification on text, and I like it a lot. And then in addition to Zoom, if you don't want to use Zoom, I also use Microsoft Teams. For the next several months, Microsoft is offering free access to Microsoft Teams. I use Microsoft Teams because for my corporate students at DePaul, we teach executives, and so I have a class at United and I have a class at McDonald's at both of those headquarters, and so those corporations tend to use Microsoft Teams, so I try to meet my student where they are, so I learned how to use Microsoft Teams. It's pretty easy to set up, works similar to Zoom, but it has a little bit different functionality, but still good. So those are the ways that what I'm using in my class right now. Some free available resources to students. One is Course Hero. I'm sure most of our students have used it or know of it. Accounting on Demand Slack channel, myself and 2 other professors have set up an Accounting on Demand Slack channel. I'm happy to send you that link if you want to send it out to your students. If they have questions, we're sort of like online tutors. So if they have questions, they can join our Slack channel. And then Gleim has some free resources for students as well. So what Course Hero is, if you're not familiar with it, right now they're offering free access to 30 million course-specific resources. They offer support also for faculty. So if you're teaching a class that's new, you just started teaching, you don't know what you're just unfamiliar with it, you can go and find other syllabi that can help you. And there's an opportunity to connect with other educators. And so Course Hero has opened up their platform in response to COVID to assist students and faculty. Gleim is also making resources available for professors or quizzes and exam questions. And so if you need more information about that, you'll see that in the slide. But again, whatever is free, there's a lot of free options right now for our students and to support us as instructors that we can pick up on. Here, if you're interested in our accounting help on demand, our Slack channel, these are my co-Slack partners, John DeJoy and Aretha Hill. And we're happy to have your students join our Slack channel where we can be a resource to you. All of us have had experience teaching online, so it was pretty easy to transition our face-to-face to an online course. So again, similar to Kim and similar to Wendy, we want to be a resource to you as well. So if you want to have your students join our Slack channel, I'm happy to send you that invitation at the bottom. But we hope that you do connect with us. I'm excited. You know, I wasn't overwhelmed by what we're facing. I'm excited that I've learned new skills. I think we're all in this stronger, better, and more efficient in the way we teach and deliver content to our students. And so here is all of our contact information, and we hope to hear from you. So I'm going to pass this back over to Jody.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much. What amazing presentations by all 3 of our professors, sharing lots of incredible materials, resources, and I really hope that this has been helpful. And we have a lot of great questions. So I'm going to try and get through as many as I can. So for Wendy, one of the questions was about the GroupMe. How do you get the students' emails? Are there any limits on GroupMe photo sharing? And how to prevent appropriate material from appearing?
Okay, so with GroupMe, you set up the group. So I used the website to set up the group. I guess I could use my phone. But I got an invite link that I could send out to my students. So they opt in. I never see their email or their phone number. They just appear in the group. You do have the ability to moderate if you want to, so you could prevent anything from going through until you okay it. I will tell you in my 2 weeks of usage, there have been no problems with it. I think there was a third part of that, Jody. Did I get Was there another part I should have
about the, I guess, the
answered?
inappropriate material?
Yeah, and that has not been a problem.
Okay.
They do have a moderate option, but I've not used it. So.
Okay. All right. And this is for Kelly. You had mentioned about questions that you have for the documentary. How do people get access to the questions? And I guess for your movie, if they're getting it off of Amazon Prime or Netflix or wherever, there's not a copyright issue. But one of the other questions is by showing different movies in class, via technology, is there a copyright issue?
So in terms of showing movies in class, I would not show a movie online to, like, that. I don't think that works well. So I would never stream something from my computer and try to Zoom meeting it, because I don't think it will work well. The copyright issue with Netflix, we are allowed to show content from Netflix, for example, for educational purposes. We can do that, but what I would do is I would just assign it outside of class and have them watch it outside of class. If you don't want to do that and you just want to use the trailer, which is like a minute and a half, there's still questions that you can ask. There's still readings. If whoever asks a question, if they send me an email, I'll send them what I use. And if they let me know what their class is that they're teaching, whether it's auditing or managerial or intro, I can send you what I use. So just shoot me an email and I'll send it to you.
For the questions, you say?
For the questions, yeah.
Okay, great. Kim, how about what is the best way to get feedback from your students on, how they're doing, what, just feedback in general and just that engagement?
I personally have a LinkedIn assignment that we were doing from the beginning of the class that I do for professional development. Reminder, most of my students are first generation, so I inject professional development as part of all my courses. So we were already on LinkedIn as a group and as a class. So I've been using our LinkedIn group to really stay engaged with the class. I was already pushing out, fun current events like the use of drones for audits, and now I'm using it more as a way to reach out to them and get them to post things back to me. So that's why I said this week they're posting their favorite parody video. Again, we're on spring break, so it's just a way for me to reach out to everyone and get them engaged back so that when we come back from spring break, everyone's ready. And then through the learning management system, there's always ways to provide feedback for students that way. But I know, based on my own experience at home with my own children, that every faculty member has a different way they're engaging students. So I'm trying not to add other platforms to class. I'm just sticking with the ones we already had in place, because I know they're having to manage a completely different online environment for every single faculty member they're interacting with. So I'm limiting it, but still trying to make sure that they feel like they're cared about and that I still am wanting to interact with them like we do in class.
Okay. Wendy or Kelly, do you want to share any of your feedback on how you're getting that feedback from your students? Oh, we're good. We'll go to another question.
Okay, I'll go.
Okay. So actually, Wendy, you want to answer that? Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go to the next question.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay. How are you, and Wendy, I'll give this question to you. How are you assessing students when it comes to material normally assessed through exams?
Well, I'm still doing exams. Again, I was one of the fortunate ones who already addressed this issue because of I've restructured the class to have a lot less emphasis on exams, and my exams are algorithmic and pooled, so no one gets the same exam. So more of the emphasis in my class is on the homework and the quizzes and things like that. So exams are taking kind of a back seat right now, and I think we can't. I think remote proctoring adds a whole nother level of complexity and stress for students and faculty. So I think redoing how we look at exams is probably appropriate.
For my class, this is Kelly. For my class, I did all of our quizzes online anyway. So all of my students always did quizzes online, and they were timed quizzes. They had 10 questions, and so they were used to doing that anyway. And so doing the exam online wasn't a big switch for me. And what I've noticed is there's no statistical difference between my face-to-face quiz grades and my online quiz grades and my face-to-face test and my online test. So it makes me feel a little bit assured that there's not any cheating going on because there seems to be a consistency not only in the class but within the students, so between the students. So if I have a AB student, they tend to score AB on their quizzes and AB on their tests, in the online environment. So I haven't seen where I have a student that, they just spike up and you start thinking somebody else is doing the work. I haven't seen that as my experiences yet. So I haven't been as concerned yet about a cheating issue.
Okay, great. Kim, I'm going to ask you this question. I have students who complain that we are not exclusively using the textbook, but rather incorporating outside materials. They feel there is a disconnect because the ideas are not 100% meshed. Any comments about how to address this issue?
I want to laugh about that because, first of all, I agree with what Kelly said. Very few of our students are even reading the textbooks, so I haven't been dependent on a textbook in years. So I've always brought other materials into class, and there's just going to be a small percent of students that cannot integrate content if you're at one of the earlier courses in the degree program. So if you're teaching at the sophomore or junior level, they're still trying to learn to integrate accounting concepts, and that means even within your own class between one resource and another resource. So the best thing you can do is just try to show them how something, I always make sure when I post something online that I tell them how that applies to this chapter's learning objective, because you can't assume they understand how to integrate that into the chapter. So I just am very forthcoming and very direct about how that, because I rely on 90% external resources.
Okay, great. And actually, Kim, since you mentioned that you have, and I know Kelly also has young kids at home, are most of the techniques used for college students working for much younger students today? And are the younger students as engaged as the college-age students? I thought this was an interesting question because of what you guys are going through at home.
I would say no. One, because of the Chromebooks are a problem. The Chromebooks limit what the students have access to, so if your child has a one-to-one school district with Chromebooks, that already limits what they have access to. But definitely they are just as distracted, probably more so, than our students. So yeah, I think it's transcending all ages.
So
okay.
For me,
Kelly, how about some? Yeah, go ahead.
For me, what I've done, my kids seem to be not too distracted, but when they have downtime, what I've been doing is suggesting some LinkedIn learning courses for them, like to give them some ideas about some new skills they can pick up. And I've been doing the same thing with my students. So I'll tell my students, see if you can find a Coursera free course to learn something new, like graphic design or comic strip writing, just something. And I found that those suggestions that are sort of outside of the typical accounting classroom, they've really found valuable. And so that's what I've been doing with my kids at home. I have a fifth grader and an eighth grader. So I'm trying to complement their coursework and what they're doing with some things that are just a little bit funner, but they're still learning. So we use a lot of Khan Academy if you have a question about something. And as you guys know, accounting requires some basic understanding of algebra, right? And so a lot of times I'll tell my students, hey, if we're doing cost, volume, profit analysis questions. And I'll say, if you need to brush up on your algebra, go and look at these couple of Khan Academy lessons on things that I think will help you. So I'm finding the things that I do with my kids and their work sort of complements what I do in my classroom.
That's awesome. And Wendy, someone asked, do you have any links to accounting Kahoot quizzes?
Actually, there are, if you go in Kahoot, and you go to create a Kahoot, there's Kahoots you can go to. They're almost all public, and you can go into a Kahoot. You can borrow any Kahoot that's there. You can search by topic, and then when you're creating a Kahoot, you can search their question bank, and so you can put in the word, say, depreciation or something like that. So there's a lot of material to get you started.
Great. And I don't know who to direct this to because I've never heard of this. Is Yellow Dig perceived as a teaching tool and discussion board? I've never heard of Yellow Dig. Do any of you know what that is?
I've never used it. This is Kelly. I've never used it.
Okay.
Yeah, I've not used it either.
Okay. So two other things, and then I think we're almost at the end. But one of the other TV shows that I know, Kelly, you've used is The Prophet. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you've used The Prophet in your classes? And maybe
So I use The Prophet in my cost managerial accounting class. And it's a show where this serial entrepreneur goes into these businesses and tries to save them. And what you realize when you start watching it is he's talking about tons of managerial and financial accounting terms. And so I've used several of the episodes both as an in-class viewing or as an out-of-class assignment. And I believe an individual episode on Amazon costs 99 cents. So it's not, cost prohibitive to assign because it's 99 cents. But the type of discussion that you can have around it and the kind of assignment you can create around it is pretty cool. And again, if anybody wants to see how I've used this episode, it's about this business called Key Lime Pie Company, and all of the questions that go with it, it just really makes the terms come to life. Because as we know, reading the book is a challenge. I think even if someone read the book for them, listening to someone read the book would be a challenge. So we have to think about how to get at them in a different way. And so I found that The Prophet works. I found that Shark Tank, those little Shark Tank mini pitches, those help too, because they're always talking about what's your gross margin. They're always talking about that. They're always talking about when do you break even. And so those little things, you can find those oftentimes for free on LinkedIn. Free on YouTube, and you can just send a link and put that in your class as well. So it just sort of breaks it up, because I think one of the biggest challenges I know my colleagues at DePaul have found is where do we find video content? And so knowing where to look and how to embed that in your class, I think really just pumps it up a little bit. And so The Prophet has been one of my favorites, but Shark Tank works too.
Great. And before I turn it back to Margaret for some last comments, I just want to remind everyone on the line that IMA has some amazing resources that Kim referred to in her presentation. Our IMA Educational Case Journal has over 100 cases plus teaching notes. And in the appendix, we have a step-by-step guide on how you access those cases. And we also have our award-winning Strategic Finance magazine that is available online to all of your students. It is sfmagazine.com, and they can access all articles, and you can assign them and have them write just of the article for your classes. We also have wonderful webinars and podcasts. And much, much more. So definitely please download the PowerPoint from today and look at the appendix to see some further information. And don't forget to nominate your students for CMA scholarships. Every college and university across the globe can nominate up to 10 students per university that will allow their students to take the exam at no cost to themselves. So I just want to thank again Dr. Church, Dr. Teets, and Dr. Pope for sharing their wisdom and information and tricks of the trade. I think it's been amazing, and I hope everyone agrees. And now I'm going to turn it back to Margaret.
Thank you, Jody. At this time, I'd like to thank our presenters, Drs. Kim Swanson-Church, Wendy Teets, and Kelly Richmond Pope, for sharing their knowledge and expertise with us. We're very appreciative that they've made time for IMA and for our audience today. And also, thank you, Jody Ryan, for moderating today's event. I want to again thank all of you for your participation in today's event, your commitment to IMA, and your professional development through IMA's Insight Talk Faculty Friday webinar series. I look forward to spending time with you again soon when we'll enjoy some more Insight Talk.